Something's different here. What? You've had a mouth transplant. Madam Contest Master, fellow Toastmasters, and guests, these were the words of Laura, my dentist's hygienist, at my recent dental appointment. She could not believe how fabulously more healthy my mouth looked just 4 months since I started flossing every day. She was so enthused. I gotta be honest, it took her 20 years. My dentist, Greg, Laura, the other dental hygienists along the way, many of them, I don't know if it was me or not, but they just decided to, I don't know if they decided to leave the dental hygienist profession, but it seemed like they get kind of exasperated that I hadn't been flossing, and after a few appointments I didn't see them anymore. My mouth was horrible. It was 20 years that they were working on me to get me to floss. I was raised in a good home. I don't know exactly why I never got in the daily flossing habit. Well, sure, I tried, but it just never worked out. How many of you have ever tried to floss? Raise your hand. How many of you know what floss is? I won't ask you the following questions. How many floss regularly? How many floss every day? I will not do that, I promise you. I understand probably many of you actually do. Many of you don't. What I want to do, because I'm so excited about the transformation in my oral health and actually in my overall life, just from flossing every day, I wanted to share with you how I actually got in the daily flossing habit. And it was I was stubborn. I could not get into this habit to save my life, but finally I just decided to do it. And I actually got a little notebook and I wrote down exactly what worked and what didn't. And finally I was able to come up with a method, just not that much different than when you see on TV, the dancers on TV, they do steps. Well, I figured out the steps to a lasting daily flossing habit, and that's what I'm going to share with you today. Step number 1, why should you floss in the first place? I figured it out. The reason to floss, the only reason to floss, is so your mouth will feel great every day. You say, well, why? I mean, isn't it all about having better oral health and that kind of thing? No. I learned those reasons for 20 years and it didn't work out. It wasn't until I put in my head that the only reason to floss was so my mouth would feel great every day that I actually got in the habit. Have you ever had a massage? Sure. You're probably thinking, well, my mouth feels pretty good, I don't really need to floss. Well, if you ever had a massage, you probably felt pretty good when you went in there, but after you had the massage, you felt great. It's the same with flossing. Second thing is make sure that you have at least 5 packages of dental floss at home at all times. And I recommend Glide dental floss. Why 5 packages of dental floss? You know the little sample size they give you at the dentist's office? Well, I figured out that I really couldn't establish the daily flossing habit with a couple of feet of dental floss. And it seemed like when I first started, my mouth would really feel beat up. I guess that's a normal thing, that at first maybe the gums bleed a little bit and stuff and it just doesn't feel really comfortable. But the whole idea is after a few months of flossing, the mouth feels great. So what I found out though is my body wasn't really agreeing with that. So my body would do all these kind of tricks to try to stop me from flossing. And one of the things was sometimes my hand would twitch when I was holding it. And one time the floss went up in the air and did the loop-de-loop and splashed in the toilet bowl. Another time, same thing happened, the other hand. Floss went up in the air hit the ground, the cat batted it around the house. Gotta have 5, and it's gotta be glide. It's the best, it feels the best. Another thing you want to do is stand in front of the mirror, make it the same as your brushing routine. Just stand there, floss first, make a deal with yourself. Floss first. I figured it out. If you make a deal with yourself and you floss first and then brush right after, and you make a deal with yourself, you're not even going to brush. Your mouth really likes the feeling that when it's brushed, and it's not going to be real happy if you don't brush. So if you do them at the same time, it all works out really good. And another thing that you want to make sure that you do is you use the long strands. Now, I'd say it's about this big. Now, somebody that's maybe a fisherman would be able to give you an exact measurement of how big this is, but I'd say about this. The idea is to get it like 3 or 4 pieces of floss to do your whole mouth, because otherwise you're either doing the small pieces or you're doing the really long pieces, and you want to get it just about 3 or 4 pieces, so it just works out better. And then you rinse your hands and dry them between each piece, because you get a fair amount of junk on your hands. It's not a real. You want the clean feeling, is what I'm trying to say when you get it through here. And another thing you want to do, and I know I say this for last because it's something that's kind of controversial, but you really want to wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning to do this. Don't say, oh, I'm going to do it at night, because you'd be too tired then. You're holding your arms up. It takes you a long time to do it at first. Do it early in the morning when you're fresh. Ben Franklin woke up at 5 o'clock every morning, and he lived to ripe old age. I don't think he was a flosser, but it worked for me just to have the extra time. My life is so much better since I started flossing. It's one of those things, one thing leads to another. When I started flossing, I started to eat better, I started to exercise more, lost a few pounds, developed better work habits, all because I flossed. Not a contest now.